I want to highlight this and share an exercise. Some of you all have done this with me before, but I want to dig into this idea of listening as a choice, because if we can really see that listening is a choice, and intellectually we get it, but the next step is to actually implement it. If we can begin intentionally choosing our listening, we can create a different level of results. We can hear things that we typically miss. And so I want to do something that introduce something I call the distinction listening. The distinction listening. So grab whatever note paper you have, or book or notebooks. And I want to play a short game with everybody in the room, and this will be an individual game. And before we play the game, I'll tell you kind of the rules or set the stage. So I want you, so the rules of the game are, I'm going to ask you to think of a person. Now, the rules are is this person can be dead or alive. It can be somebody you know personally, spent some time with, or somebody you've never met. The stipulation is they have to be a real person, so not Donald Duck or Goofy or Mickey Mouse, right? It has to be a real person. But again, dead or alive, somebody you know or have never met, has to be a real person. I want you to take a moment, and we'll give you a couple minutes to think about this. And think of, I want you to put yourself in your office, and there's a knock on your office door. I want you to think of a person who you would give your very best listening to, your most open listening to. That if you opened the door and they were standing there and they said, I've been sent to spend the next 60 minutes with you. I want to share some things with you. You can ask me questions, we can have a conversation, but I'm here. You get 60 minutes and that's it. Who is the person in your world, or who is the person that comes to mind that you would be so there, so present, right? Email doesn't exist, right? Other things going on, this person has all of my attention. That when whatever they have to share with you, you want to hear it, you want to receive it, you want to be fully present for it, right? You don't want to miss a syllable. You don't want to miss any advice, any instruction, any ideas, any of the experience they have for you. You don't want to miss anything. Who would that person be for you? Who would have all of your listening, your very best listening, your full attention? Take a moment and think about that. Who would that person be for you? And we often hear about, active listening and level 1, level 2, level 3 listening. I love this because for my person is my grandfather, so Damien and I are breaking some norms because the men in our family tend to pass early, but we never met our grandfather. And to have an hour with him, this man, he was a dentist here in Louisville. He owned property and tried to build neighborhoods for blacks that weren't in the ghetto, and the KKK kept burning everything down, so he'd have to move. He was president of the NAACP here. He helped sue the city of Louisville and file a lawsuit to make it possible for African Americans to play on public golf courses and go to public parks. I have letters of correspondence between him and Thurgood Marshall as he fought for equality in teacher pay. Right? So just these incredible stories I have this man, but I've never spent 1 second in a room with him. The kind of listening I would have for the stuff that he did.
He's also a principal and the superintendent of a school district in Kentucky.
It's just amazing, right? To be in a room with him, he would have, there would be no judgment. Oh man, why is his hair like that? Or what kind of clothes is he wearing? Or what is this, what is that? It just wouldn't be a thing. You would just have such open listening for him. All right, I got one more round of my game. We're halfway done. Round 2. Same rules apply. Right? So, person has to be a person, a real person. They can be dead or alive. It can be somebody that you know or somebody that you've never met. Except this time, you're still in your office, you hear that knock on the door opens, and the second you see who it is, you just shut down. We're going to channel the most closed listening and just tune everything out, not hear anything. We're going to judge everything. You know, we're going to bring our most judgmental listening. Sometimes when I do talks, I just tell people, I just call it from jump. I said, we talk about the kind of listening. Sometimes I use the example I use, but we won't go back to that. But I tell them, you could come to this from a place of judgmental listening. You probably already have. You probably judge the outfit I'm wearing, the voice. Okay, we've got some marketing people in the room. If you're anything like me, when marketers give presentations, I judge the decks. Like when I see a really bad deck put on by a marketer or a marketing company, I'm like, this is what you do. This is how you communicate. And I've got this slide filled with 1 million words. Doesn't make sense, right? So we can bring that listening. But what are we missing, right? I'm so busy judging the deck or judging the outfit or judging how they're walking across stage or judging something about what's going on in the room. What am I missing in those moments? Right? So we can see how we can always come from this place, and when we're met with these people, that is our default listening for that person. Can you feel the difference between these two types of listening? It's kind of cool because we can see the default listening we have for people that it's like, well, if you put this circumstance, or if I really slow down, this is the kind of listening I'd want to bring to this. And this is the default listening that typically shows up, or I fear would show up in that situation. Right? So now we're even starting to play with this distinction between our default way of listening, right? And maybe that changes with various people, but we have default ways of listening. And listening is an intentional choice. You talked about intentionality earlier. If listening truly is a choice, one could argue that we could have that kind of listening for anybody. Even the people on the other side of the tile, of the distinction. You know, it's so funny when you start thinking about default listening, how we go in. I mean, conferences are a great example. It's like, cool, I've got these breakout sessions, I've got conferences, there are people on stage, and you hear stuff and you get gold. But what might you get out of that situation if you brought this kind of listening? What might your next one-on-one with your direct report be? Or volunteer in your organization, right? Or your kid, if you brought this kind of listening? What might the next conversation with your boss? One of the things Marwan and I used to talk a lot about was, how do we bring this kind of listening to this kind of relationship? You know, and here's the thing, it's selfish, right? Because as long as Marwan has this kind of listening for his boss, do you think he's leaving opportunity on the table? He's leaving growth, experiences that, well, now he's beyond him, now he doesn't work for the guy. Do you think that there may have been something along the way that might be useful in Marwan's role now, that because he had closed listening, because he was closed off to, he may not have gotten, may not have heard? You know, it's easy to say, well, and we all do it, right? Both with parents or bosses, to say, well, I've learned from the good and the bad. I've learned as much from what not to do and how they show up as what to do. And that's great. And I'm willing to bet that when we have closed listening, we're missing some stuff. My coach, one of the things I really value about Ankush is that he'll challenge me. Is I will show up and say, this person this, and this, and this, and this. And the question that drives me nuts, every time, even when I know it's coming, but it drives me nuts, is I will tell him a story or an example about some interaction, some personal, some professional, and he will listen to all of it. And sometimes he'll ask me the question, great, thanks for sharing all that. Where were they right? And when he first used to do it, I would be like, they're not. like nowhere. That's why I'm bringing it here, because they're ridiculous. Right? Like the fact that they could come from this place or see the world in this way is insanity to me. You'd say, great, even if it's only 5%, Is there something that they shared with you where they were right? Is there something they're reflecting back to you that you can learn from, that you can grow from? Where were they right? And when I slow my mind down and get out of any of the emotion or any of the judgment, and not even to the point of I have to agree with everything they said, but usually there's something in there that is helpful to me, that is informative to me, that is something I can use, that it's data for a decision I need to make or a way of showing up.